This episode of the Zero Cafe podcast is made possible by our partners Online Influence Institute and VWO. Today I talk with Alex Ivanyuk, who is a senior software engineer at LinkedIn and a tech lead of the Experimentation platform team. He's an author of quite some blog posts about what they're doing at LinkedIn, including the blog post about the prehistory of the Experimentation platform, making the LinkedIn experimentation engine 20 times faster, and most recently, he released a blog post about assigning variants at scale. And today we're going to talk about exactly this, experimentation at LinkedIn. In case you missed the previous episode, last time I spoke with Steen Rasmussen about data activation and supercharging the customer journey with analytics data. If you want to listen to that episode, you know the drill. You can go to www.zero.cafe or you can listen to it in the podcast app you're listening with right now. Welcome to Season 3, Episode 16. Alex, welcome to the Zero Cafe podcast. And glad you're able to share some information on how you're doing things at LinkedIn. We're all very curious what you're about to share, and we're not gonna like we spoke about it in our talk before. We're not gonna deep dive into all the different experiments that LinkedIn is doing right now. That's not the aim of the talk, but we just to give some context to our listeners what you're working on. Could you give us some examples of features that were built to benefit the members that came out of this program?
I think it's an interesting topic in its own. And I think that our experimentation actually extends beyond just a simple conversion rate optimization. And it's embodied in the principles and values of LinkedIn. And, you may have heard that one of the values of LinkedIn is putting members first. And that means that whatever we do to the benefit of every member. And that's realized in a number of things that we do. One of them is an initiative called Project Every Member, where LinkedIn promises to try to completely eradicate, or at least to equalize the gap between some people with great social capital, with a lot of connections, and some people with lower social capital, and who do not really have a chance of getting a good job, or have a lesser chance of getting a good job, finding a good opportunity, finding a good, maybe, job opportunity or anything like that. So, there were researches that said that if you have a lot of connections, you're 2 times more likely to get a top job, right? And if you were in a top school, you are also much more likely to have a lot of connections, which will lead to having better jobs, better salary in the end. And we all know that the talent is distributed uniformly across the Earth population, but the opportunity is not. And that's why LinkedIn actually puts a lot of emphasis on trying to equalize the opportunity for everyone. And some things that we do, we run experiments and we specifically measure the impact on different groups of populations, like people who have great social capital, a lot of connections, or influencers, and people who have fewer connections. Maybe they are new members to the site. Maybe they just have unlucky situation in their life, or maybe their circle of friends, acquaintances is not really present on LinkedIn. And one of the examples that where we could see a positive impact of our changes was providing instant job notifications on the site. And that a lot of jobs are actually filled through personal connections. And again, that speaks of a high value of social capital. And by providing instant job notifications, we allow users, even who do not have those social connections, to find jobs more easily and be able to apply to them right away. And recruiters are much more likely to review the applications filled this way, like within the first few days. And that had a tremendous positive impact on people with lower social capital. And we actually measured a bunch of other things that LinkedIn is doing. So we've seen that providing a special LinkedIn Lite application for areas or countries with slower internet connection also had tremendous positive impact, because many more people were able to use the site, apply for jobs, build their networks. And any site speed improvement, any reduction in the load speed of the site also has a very good positive impact on such members. I hope that we can share a few links in the description of this podcast that speak about the project Every Member and experiments and methods that we use for making the opportunity equal. Because one interesting thing that we discovered is that a lot of changes, when people make a lot of changes, they usually have good things in mind. So they think that something will equally benefit everyone on the platform, but it's usually the case that some negative impact happens anyway, and you need to be able to detect it and address it, right? For example, speaking of A/B testing, if you have a neutral impact shown on your A/B testing dashboard, that does not mean that every member experienced a neutral impact. Maybe some of the members experience great positive impact, and some of the members experienced negative impact. But overall, it's neutral, and the change is not usually seen. And that's one of the new directions that we are looking at, and we are actually proud of. And we would like maybe to spread the word about that, and let a lot of people know about that.
Yeah. Are there common segments that you see in those tests that are often impacted in positive or negative way? But when you do those experiments, what are the segments that you look at for effects?
So we use a modified version of Atkinson index. Did you hear about that? It's a common way of measuring the equality of wealth distribution, and we changed how it works. And instead of the salary variables, we actually use the social capital value, which is expressed in the number of connections that a member has. And this way, we can measure how much of equality or equalization this change brings to the site versus maybe benefiting only influencers, like members with many top connections. And one of the things, just to give you an example, how you can maybe make a change with something good in the mind, but benefit people who already have great social capital and who may not need new connections. For example, you can show profiles that other people looked at, and just imagine that you only select profiles that already get the most views from the network, and you put them in this section of the site. So if you use this approach, then influencers will benefit a lot more, and actually that section is very likely to have only influencers in there, but members who have very few profiles will never show up there. So it's an example when a good intention might bring unintended consequences, right? And it will not be directly observable from the A/B testing dashboard, because very few influencers will get the benefit, but the members overall will get very little benefit. So it may be like a very small improvement seemingly, but the impact will be unequally distributed.
Yeah, I suppose as a networking site, you benefit more from the overall number of connections, right? Not just the few people at the top having a lot of connections and everyone else just having a few. But if everyone is connected more equally, that benefits the network way more than just adding a few more followers or connections for those top influencers.
Right, and actually, I think the emphasis that we put here is that the change that we are looking at should benefit people more, should benefit people first and foremost, rather than the network itself. Because whenever we have someone join us as a member, we should strive to improve their life, to provide them job opportunities, to provide them a way to find connections who can give an advice, who can maybe teach some skills or let people learn something on the site. So we try to make every person better, more educated, more skillful, help people to adapt to the new changes in this uncertain world. And that's why we are very much interested not only to see the number of connections to go up, but to make sure that they go up reasonably. And a lot of people benefit from that rather than just a select few.
Exactly. Yeah, and you just mentioned those LinkedIn values. One of those is members first. What are the other values, and how do these values basically drive or inform your experimentation program?
So I will try to recall them without looking up. So the other value is relationship matters, and I think LinkedIn is one of the best companies to work in, and that means that whatever we do internally, we should also think about our colleagues, about our peers, and think how we can build long-term relationships that can be to everyone's benefit. And even if there are some situations where it's hard to prove who's right, who's wrong, we always strive to resolve such situations in the best way possible. And we even have a special process called clean resolution process whenever you have to address some change, and there are two sides, and you cannot prove a certain thing with just numbers by using A/B testing dashboard. We sit together and we try to work through our disagreements, and then we try to understand what we disagree upon, and only then we call upon our managers to help us to resolve this argument or disagreement. I think that's a very constructive process, and it's one of the best I've seen in the technical companies, and I worked in a few. Have to join in LinkedIn. What else do we have?
Yesterday's brainstorm was so good. I really liked Steph's idea of running that test on the call to action buttons. Making them orange will really make them stand out, don't you think?
Yeah, right. Do you want to design real A/B test winners and achieve enormous conversion uplift? Then stop brainstorming and take a scientific approach. If you can read Dutch, follow the steps in Online Invloed, the bestseller on managementbook.nl. Or enroll in the author's course and become an expert in applying proven behavioral science yourself. Go to onlineinfluence.com for more information and free downloads. Well, one of them, there are 6. One of them, I think that the most obviously one that speaks to experimentation is take intelligent risk.
Take intelligent risks, right? And that's very interesting one. I think it's very pretty much in the spirit of LinkedIn to do something, but also to realize the consequences of doing such. And if you're certain that some change will bring a positive impact to everyone, then you should go ahead and do that. But you should realize that that's a risk as well, and take some steps to mitigate the risk. And our experimentation platform has a lot of such things that let you to take risks and understand their impact on the platform, on your product, on the performance of the site, on anything. We actually have about 8,000 metrics that we generate in our A/B testing dashboards. And
that's a lot of data to look at after a test.
Yes, and we provide ways for people to discover positive and negative consequences of taking risks. And we have special data pipelines that let you to get the results very quickly. And they're not suitable for regular ramping, because you should not trust your results in just a few hours of running. There's always some seasonality impact. There's maybe you might need to get a larger slice of the population to make sure that your experiment is powerful enough. But if we are able to detect a negative impact within just a few hours after an experiment start, then we can always ramp down, or we can kill the experiment, try to understand what's wrong with that, and then restart again. And this way, I think it facilitates taking of intelligent risks pretty much.
Yeah.
So we have the other one is inspiring excellence, and I like that very much. And I gave a few talks before on the history of the experimentation platform and how we have improved it continuously over the past 10 years. And one of the things I'm specifically proud of is how fast our data processing became. So I've calculated that our pipelines run about 100 times faster than they were running about 7 or 8 years before. And that's not a result of adding more hardware. So we've added hardware on the way there, but our data has grown many more times, and we were still able to keep up with the data growth and also continue to generate results within just a few hours after the data collection window ends. Acting like an owner, that's another interesting value of LinkedIn. So all of them seem to be pretty cohesive, and whenever you take an intelligent risk, you should be taking the ownership of that, and you should be responding to consequences, right? You should own the consequences whenever they are positive or negative, and you should try to do everything possible that members are not harmed in any way, that we try to make sure that there's no site stability issue and so on and so forth. There's one more, but I think we've
be open, honest, and constructive.
Yes, I think it's pretty much aligned with quote unquote relationship methods as well, and they work pretty much together. So we value feedback very much, and we value constructive discussions, and we always strive to make sure that whatever we do or say is constructive, right? It's always hard when it's sometimes hard when you're passionate about your product, but we try to be reasonable, and we strive to be constructive and use data to prove our position rather than to use our emotion to prove our position.
Yeah. How far is that's ingrained in the rest of the company? I mean, usually A/B testing or experimentation starts in the website because it's an own channel. We have a lot of data there. That's relatively easy to start. But for example, is it also something that happens, I don't know, at customer support or sales, or are there also experiments going on there, or is it fairly limited to? Well, limited is relative, I guess. I mean, the website is the product, of course, but is it also a part of other parts of the company, or?
So we say jokingly that experimentation runs in our blood in LinkedIn. That's that's literally a joke, but I would say that we have thousands of users internally who run experimentation, and almost every feature release is accompanied by an A/B test or a few A/B tests, and we do not do A/B testing only in the cases when it's not possible. Like, for example, when you run an upgrade of the operational system, sometimes it's very hard to attribute the changes to a certain machine or to a certain service instance. We are trying to cover as many cases internally, and we are trying to cover the processes that are not yet covered by A/B testing. But I would say that 80 to 90% of all the releases probably go through A/B testing, and the rest just cannot use A/B testing for one reason or the other.
Okay, so let's talk about that experimentation culture a bit. What do you see as the main features of that at LinkedIn? How does that work?
So we believe that LinkedIn is a data-driven company, and experimentation is required because we think that numbers are an objective way. Of course, the data can always be interpreted in multiple ways, but we think that data is a more objective way than someone's opinion. And that's why all the feature releases go through A/B testing, and people use the experimentation platform for multiple reasons. So one of them is to get measurement. The other one is to make sure that they can quickly roll back a bad release if it's required, because it may take sometimes relatively long time with regular service rollouts or data updates. But with A/B testing, you just deramp a feature flag, and that's done. We use A/B testing also to target some specific populations of users and make sure that the feature gets rolled out only in a certain geographical area or for a certain population, because there are cases when there are, every country is different, and every country has different laws, custom, and traditions, and not all the things are possible across all the countries, or maybe some countries need a special approach or a different version of the site being published. So these are the ways how people use experimentation. And it's interesting that when you have so many users in the company who run A/B testing, the culture at some point starts evolving also on its own, and different teams internally self-organize. They create their own processes for A/B testing. They start having their own requirements for running A/B testing. So, for example, some teams run thousands of tests per year. So more than one test per person in the organization per year. And some teams, like our data science team, have a greater need for advanced methodologies. And that's why we have a cooperation with them to develop advanced methodologies like variance reduction or observational causal studies methodologies. And it's very interesting how people also create processes around experimentations. Like at this point, when you run thousands of experiments, you have to have some process because if you run that many features, some features may get deprioritized, some features may get abandoned, some people may be tempted to run their releases very quickly because they truly believe that there's no risk and they can make a greater good by running it out in just a few days instead of waiting for a few weeks and be completely sure. So different teams have different processes. And another interesting aspect is that experimentation, we have a lot of roles in experimentation because different people have different responsibilities and they need to have a different special interaction with the platform. For example, we have site reliability engineers who need to be aware of all the changes in all the services they monitor, and they need to understand when a certain change gets activated, and they need to have a way to correlate the change with some service metric drop or increase.
Yeah, one of those 8,000.
So we actually have a different set of service metrics, and it's very hard to attribute A/B testing results to those. Although I think we have an initiative to try to do that, but they need to be able to correlate. And if there's certain correlation, they can always go and investigate whether it's not only correlation, but also causation, that this A/B test has truly triggered a problem on the site, and they can always go and deactivate the thing and see whether that fixes the situation. We have program managers who are interested in the course of ramping and who want probably to see the results and maybe publish them internally, present them in front of the leadership. We have data scientists who are very much interested to go in depth and analyze results in a very detailed fashion. And they go and take experiment data, try to generate additional data dimensions or to apply additional experimentation methodologies on top of that. So we have special tools for data scientists. And then we have developers who are responsible for a lot of things in the process, like for making sure that the experiment gets integrated in the code. Then some developers play the role of rampers, experimental rampers, and also they watch results, and also together with SREs play in the first or second line of defense whenever there's unintended consequence happening because of some experiments. So the culture, I would say the culture is so complex and so vibrant at the same time that it's very interesting to be a part of this community.
Will this work? Maybe not. Isn't that what we're all trying to figure out? With VWO, create and A/B test different variations of your website to continuously discover the best performing versions that improve conversions. Stop guessing. Start A/B testing with VWO today.
And do you know, you work for LinkedIn now for over 5 years. Do you know if this was always a part of LinkedIn, and was it always in the blood of everyone at LinkedIn to run experiments? Or did LinkedIn have to make a change at some point to get everyone doing this?
So, I gave a talk about half a year ago, and we published a few blog posts. There were some experiments being run about 12 years ago, but they were totally ad hoc, and it was a completely manual process where you would have to go and manually embed experiment definitions into services configs and then publish the service or multiple services. Then you would have to put some data into R and then generate results manually. But it was riddled with problems, honestly. First of all, it was taking too much time, and there were statistical significance problems, and the methodology was not truly scientific. So I don't know what happened in 2010. I think we had gotten a few smart people on board at LinkedIn who decided that it's not the right situation. And maybe people were truly inspired with the data-driven direction LinkedIn was taken. And also we have a few statisticians and data scientists in the leadership, and it's pretty much in the culture, and it's thanks to our leaders that LinkedIn started to develop in the experimentation platform. And for the first few years, the team was mostly building the foundations. We came with an idea of a unified metric platform, which is a single source of truth for all the metrics in the company for both experimentation and reporting. And that's an awesome thing, because some companies have one set of metrics for reporting, the other one set of metrics for A/B testing, but then it may be very hard to make sense of how they relate to each other, especially if they're defined in different ways.
Yeah.
And
which happens a lot.
Yes. Then we also have Yasu, who had a prior experimentation background in Microsoft and who joined our company, and she truly took our platform to the next level. And around 2015, we've realized that, oh my gosh, we have so much data, honestly, that it becomes we have to shift the focus from just building the foundation and adding new features to understand how we can make sense of so much data and how we can process it much more quickly. Because at the time, let's say you start an experiment on Monday, then you would get your first results by Thursday only, and that was considered pretty normal. So we understood that the experimentation system does not only need to exist, but also be fast and have low latency of result generation, because then it would be so much more useful. And now, people have been used to getting their experimentation results so quickly. Now, if there's a delay sometimes of 1 or 2 hours, they may be sending us emails and asking us, the results are supposed to be here. why is there a delay? It's not always the case, but it's still funny since I remember how slow it was about 6 years ago when I just joined the company. And we compare the development of the experimentation platform to some form of Maslow's hierarchy. So, the Maslow's hierarchy, when you have first physiological need, safety, physiological needs, and then it goes up to intellectual and self-realization needs. So the same is actually true, or a very similar thing is true about the experimentation platform. So you just start with the point where the experimentation system just needs to exist to simplify certain day-to-day tasks of all of the people involved in experimentation. And then you need to make sure that it becomes trustworthy, it becomes reliable, so that people get results whenever they are expected, so that they can promptly continue their experiments or promptly fix their problems. Then you also go towards intellectualization, and you want to make sure that the platform generates insights. It can filter out signal from the ocean of noise, because not every experiment moves all 8,000 metrics. And so the further it goes, the more intellectual it becomes. And then it goes into the base of advanced methodologies that are only applicable for specific use cases like variance reduction, or one of the things that we have recently developed internally is budget splitting experimentation, when you have certain treatments competing for the same budget allocation, and which would yield incorrect results. If you run a conventional A/B test, by the way, there will be a blog post on the engineering blog, I think within a few weeks about that. So that's a very interesting topic to read about, and a lot more things. So it's very interesting to see the direction of the platform's development. And in the recent years, we have seen a lot of specialization to be able to handle very specific but yet very impactful use cases from the company correctly.
Did a lot of things change during your time at LinkedIn? Of course, technology has changed a lot. I mean, that's what you're working on. But do you also experience a big change in culture or mindset, or was it already pretty mature 5 years ago, and it's been pretty much the same last 5 years?
So
how people at the company approach experimentation?
I think the culture has been changing as well, and I think that a lot more teams started realizing the importance of running processes, and the company is growing naturally, and the teams become larger, and teams realize that whatever was useful for the team of a very small size, like when you just have several people in it, it cannot be applied to the teams when you have hundreds of people there. And you have to control the chaos. Otherwise, so you have planning process, you have some feature development process, but you also need to have some process in regards to making A/B testing orderly and organized. And you need to make sure that all the things are either completely ramped or completely deramped, because there are different situations when people may forget, or people may leave the company without having finished the A/B test. People may some initiatives may be deprioritized for various reasons, and there are different life situations that also will impact A/B testing. So you have to have a process for eliminating the chaos of A/B testing, and I think that's a pretty difficult task. So it's always easier to create something rather than to take a certain degree of chaos under your control. And other directions, like I said, we see a lot of specialization in the needs. Different organizations have different experimentation needs, because they have different preferred ways of executing experimentation. For example, our artificial intelligence org they tend to have very, very long A/B tests that are continuous, and they never stop because they may be A/B testing their feed ranking models, and it's a continuous process. So there's never end. There's never full perfection, and it cannot probably be achieved this way, but they may have hundreds of iterations over multiple years to see, and then it naturally comes that they have to maybe have a different ways of interacting with the iterations. Maybe they want to see certain results for a specific iteration. Maybe they want to highlight what models are the most impactful and what models did not work at all. So they want to apply some metadata. And data scientists, on the other hand, need support with tools to run some custom analysis. And some things they may have been doing manually using R or Python by applying data science libraries, but it's really laborsome, and it takes quite a long time when you need to run a causal analysis study manually. I think it can take a few weeks easily, but when you have a support from a tool, I think it just reduces to maybe to the order of a few days and a day in the worst case. And there's a lot of support that the platform provides in such a case.
So what kind of support are you giving the users? Let's as a case. So if I work at LinkedIn and I want to run a test, what is the process I need to go through? And do I need to take into account other experiments that are running? Or, for example, is the tool alerting me for conflicts in that case, or how does that work?
So that first of all, we need to identify your role, whether you have joined LinkedIn as a developer or as a program manager or someone else. But let's say you're a developer, right? And what you have to do, you have to go to the UI and create a test entry on the UI and specify a few configuration things like test name, who is the owner, what is the internal team responsible for the test. It's always a problem of ownership because people move around. Sometimes people leave the company. Also, you specify metrics of interest, some things that you're going to be looking for directly, and maybe they are related to your problem area. Like if you're working on the talent services, you may be interested in learning what's the impact on in-mail acceptance rate. That's, by the way, one of the metrics that shows how we measure benefit for the members as well, because when a recruiter sends an email and someone replies, usually that means that there's certain match between recruiter's intention to hire someone and between a person responding to this invite. And it's a good sign that a conversation has started, and maybe there will be some interview and hiring in the end. So after you have identified those metrics of interest, you go and embed a few lines of the code into your project. So that's an if-else switch in your code that identify how what direction the execution will take. Either it will execute some treatment behavior, or it will execute the default behavior. And you, the next thing you need to do is to make sure that you have metrics, all the metrics that you need to measure. And since we have about 8,000 metrics, most likely that the metrics are already present there and someone has already created them, and you do not have to do any additional work usually in that case. And then you go deploy your service, make sure that the code with the A/B test is there, and you activate your test on the UI. And from that moment on, the service may produce some information about who has seen the test, what treatment they received, and when it happened. So this goes to our Hadoop clusters, and in the background, we do some magic processing and generate results on the A/B dashboard. And the dashboard basically tells user what happened, how it happened, and whether there were any problems detected automatically, whether there was any negative impact on the metrics of interest, or on the metrics that were identified as true north for the company. And we also provide some other tools to help people not to break anything on the way, consistent with taking intelligent risks. First of all, we provide a tool for experiment owners to connect with metric owners. And let's say if you have a few thousand people running experimentation, and then you have 8,000 metrics that may have also a few thousand of owners, it's very hard to figure out the interaction between the two, because some person may care a lot about email acceptance rate, and they may see some change, but they don't know whether it's a part of organic growth or decline, or whether that was an impact caused by some experiment or a range of experiments. So what we do, we show experiments that have moved the metric most for the past 30 days, and we provide a way for those people to connect and try to understand the impact, whether it's justified or not, and whether any actions need to be done there. Also, we do we have some mechanisms to alert experiment owners as well. So whenever a metric of interest moves in an unintended direction, they also get notified, especially if it's an impact that's above certain threshold. Beside that, our experiment assignment or treatment assignment is implemented in such a way that experiments, if they are relatively large, do not interact with each other. So we have released a blog post on that quite recently. I hope the link will be in the description of the podcast.
Yep, I'll add that.
So we basically guarantee that the assignments are independent of each other by using a hashing approach. And this way, experiment owners do not usually have to worry of whether their experiment will move metrics for the other experiment as well. So the relative impacts for the experiments should not be impacted by each other. Of course, the absolute impact on the entire site depends on all the experiments that are run, but you can always trust the relative impact measurement in that case. There are some rare cases when experiments need to be aligned with each other, or there are some rare cases where they may have some interference on each other. And in that case, we actually provide a tool for data scientists to analyze such interference and understand whether that's a real thing and whether anything needs to be done with that.
Yeah. Okay. Now, Alex, you are the tech lead of the experimentation program. So I assume you and your team mainly concern is the software itself, the technology behind that. Do you also have people, or I assume actually teams of people within LinkedIn that help people do this, help them with the process, especially new people, help them, first off, get into this mindset, but also understand how experimentation works and spread that, the culture of experimentation within the company?
That's a great question. Thank you. First of all, I would like to note that we run A/B tests even on our own infrastructure whenever it's applicable. So sometimes you may see an A/B test within all other A/B tests, and that's a pretty awesome thing.
Very meta,
yeah. And we have a few ways to help to educate people on the best ways of running A/B tests. So first of all, every engineer who joins the company goes through a bootcamp process where they get information about certain technologies that LinkedIn uses internally, certain tools, and we actually have a dedicated session on A/B testing to show how A/B tests can run. And we also, from time to time, we run advanced training courses for A/B testing to show people how you can deep dive into the experiment results, how you can, let's say, change your analysis ranges, how you can schedule certain reports, and so on and so forth. And we get a great support from our data science org in terms of other things in regards to experiment preparation and helping other people to run something. So we basically answer engineering questions and some of the questions in terms of experiment setup. If it's something cumbersome or if there's some intricate setup required, or the experiment may not be truly an A/B test, we use help from our data science org. We have a dedicated experimentation research data science team, and by the way, they published quite a few papers on that. And we have a pretty large data science org in general, and those people usually get assigned to their specific product teams and help them to run their A/B tests to understand the best way of setting them up, the best way of even choosing the randomization unit or metrics that should be measured in this or other case, of whether that should be an A/B test or an observational study, causal observational study, and a lot more things. I know that not all the companies have data scientists or big data science present in the org, but actually, I think we have a lot of values coming from collaboration between engineers and data scientists, and we have made a lot of developments thanks for such fruitful collaboration.
Okay. Yeah, and you just already mentioned variance reduction methods that you have. Can you explain a bit what they do?
Yep. So I think that a lot of companies in the industry, so okay, maybe I'm not representative, but I've met at least a few, have problems with low sample sizes and not having enough statistical power for certain groups of population, because sometimes you must run an experiment on a very small geographical area, like a small town, or maybe on an area where there are a lot of people, but very small presence on the internet. And it's pretty hard to reason about the results. And the results may never become statistically significant for such areas. Also, LinkedIn is a large site, and LinkedIn provides a lot of free tools and also paid tools as well for different groups of population, like LinkedIn Talent Solution for recruiters, sales solutions, learning solutions, and marketing solutions. And all of them have different sizes of the populations of users, and or maybe even different areas of the site, like a profile page has a totally different number of visitors than the feed, the default feed page, which is on the homepage located there. So in the cases where you don't have millions of users, sometimes it's justifiable not. So you can still run a regular A/B test, but sometimes it's very important to apply some variance reduction method by either using pre-experiment metrics. That's called the Cupid method, and our head of data science, Yashu, was one of the co-authors of this method, or a stratification method, which splits the member population into certain strata based on their metrics. And we've seen such examples where that helps a lot for such smaller products or smaller use cases overall. So that's one of the things we are actively developing right now, and we hope to see a lot of good use, even for a lot more experiments. And we hope this will help us to execute experimentation faster, because at such scale, every day saved on an A/B test results in tremendous improvement for the overall site.
Yeah. Do you think there are more problems out there that other companies have that you think, oh, we already solved that at LinkedIn?
So I've mentioned observational causal studies, and I'm not representative. There are a lot of companies who run A/B testing, but I'm pretty sure that it's not a widely spread approach compared to the regular A/B testing because of its complexity. And we have predictionalized a number of methods for performing such studies, and we have seen successful examples of analyzing the impacts of experiments or pseudo experiments when there's an impact on the treatment and control allocation. And there was an article published in Harvard Business Review, I think, about it's called The Importance of Being Causal, that describes 4 use cases from LinkedIn that where we applied different observational causal methods, and where we were able to get a more precise impact. Because, for example, A/B tests were showing huge impact, but they were super optimistic, or too optimistic in that case. I think that's very powerful, but they're pretty hard to use, and I feel you need to have some statistical background to correctly use those, or at least you need to have a lot of hands-on experience. But it's much more complex than A/B testing, and that's why it's more of a specialization.
Yeah. Yeah, and the importance of being causal is in Harvard Business Review, and I found the link, so I will add that to the show notes of the podcast. What are the things you're working on the next year? Say, what are you working on? What's your plan for the next 12 months to take this even further?
So, I forgot to add something else to the previous question, which is,
oh yeah, go ahead.
Like I said, we have a huge amount of users, huge quantity of users, and then at this scale, let's say if we run thousands of experiments per year, that means that we are spending literally years on experimentation. And one of the things that we did is automating the process of ramping based on SQR methodology, which stands for speed, quality, risk. And we have a paper on that. So if you search for speed, quality, risk framework, there will be another paper published by LinkedIn data scientists, which is a method for automatically analyzing experiment results. And I remember that in one of your previous episodes, you had a discussion that you should not look at A/B testing results too often, because then there's the likelihood that you will see positive results and you will say, okay, I'm happy, I'm successful, I'm done. Let's ramp it 100%, right? So we actually employ a method there to make sure that we do not get too pessimistic and A/B results converge in some sense to a certain number. And then this particular mechanism can make a call of whether the test can be ramped up automatically and save time to the owning team, or the results need to be submitted for a human review, because there could be some controversy in the metrics. Like some metrics may increase, some metrics may decrease, and that's a human who needs to make a call of whether this experiment can be deemed successful or not. And in regards to what we will be doing in the next year, so the speed and optimization of A/B pipelines is still a thing for us, because we continue to observe data growth and the metric growth and growth in the number of tests as well. So it has been a non-stop process for over 5 years now to optimize the pipelines. And we are looking to make use of variance reduction for a lot more experiments across LinkedIn. And we want to see whether majority of LinkedIn's experiment can benefit from those methodologies, and whether we can significantly speed up our experimentation.
Yeah, I think I have a lot of reading up to do after this episode with all the articles you're referring. So that's great. But even when people think, oh, I need more things to read, do you have any book recommendations for our audience?
So one of the books that I would like to recommend is, I'm going to look it up because the title is quite long, is Trustworthy Online Controlled Experiments a practical guide to A/B testing, and that's a collaboration between Ron Kohavi from Microsoft, a former lead of Microsoft TXP team, and Yashu, who is the head of data science at LinkedIn. And they cover a lot of things that you need to do or to know to get your own A/B testing platform started. And it's really a comprehensive guide, in my opinion. And the other thing, which is not directly related to A/B testing, but I think which is very useful to understand the importance of measuring everything, is Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman, who is the Nobel Prize winner. And I adore that book because it tells so much about subconscious biases in humans' perception or reasoning that once you read it, you will trust nothing regarding what people say.
or what your own thoughts are, trusting yourself anymore.
Exactly. So you will have a lot more inclination to measure everything rather than just trust people what they're saying, even if they're completely sure and even if they say truth.
Exactly. Alex, thanks so much. Our hour is up. You've been great at sharing a lot of insights into how LinkedIn is managing all those thousands of experiments. I think that's of great value and a lot of inspiration also for our users. Something we can all work towards. So that's great. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me.
Hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And this concludes Season 3, Episode 16 of the Zero Cafe podcast with Alexander Ivanyuk. Make sure to check out the show notes on the Zero Cafe website for links to some additional information on today's topic. Talk to you next episodes, and always be optimizing.